thank Shar for that. I think it's something we all need to hear every now and then and be reminded of institutionalized racism. Now I'd like to tell you a little bit about our speaker tonight. Kwame Ture is a world-renowned lecturer, political activist, author, and organizer. While still in high school and throughout his college years, our speaker worked with the civil rights movement. He was a participant in the first freedom rides, sit-ins, and marches. From 1964 to 1966, he served as program director and chairman of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. Through this SNCC, he helped to organize the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party and the Lowndes County Freedom Organization in Alabama. The LCFO was an independent political group and was the forerunner in the Black Panther Party. In 1966, he emerged as a national leader when he proclaimed the existence of the Black Power movement during the Memphis to Jackson March, which was organized by James Merritt, and in which he, Martin Luther King, Andrew Young, and many others participated. He also served as Prime Minister of the Black Panther Party and organized several chapters of the organization. Please welcome Kwame Ture.
Good evening. We thank you for your warm welcome in cold Illinois. You know, every act has a purpose. We do not mean to imply that every individual committing an act is aware of the reason for the act, but every act has a purpose. You may, for example, ask some of your colleagues here, why did they come to the university? And they may, with all sincerity and all honesty, respond to you, But you must know they didn't come here for reasons. All you can assume is this is an unconscious student, unaware of the reasons for being at the university. The world needs conscious men and women. And certainly an oppressed people can never be free until they become conscious. Of course, when we say a conscious man and a conscious woman, we mean one who understands the reasons for all of their actions. I am a revolutionary. We revolutionaries are more than conscious. Not only do we understand the reasons for our actions, we come to effectuate the reasons for our actions, taking self-determination into our hands. I have a reason for coming here this evening. My reason is in line with the reason of human beings, of the purposes for human beings. Of course, you know, human beings have a purpose. Some students may not know their purpose for being students, and many human beings do not even ask the purpose of being a human being. But the only purpose for being a human being is to ameliorate life for future generations. Because our task is in the line of humanity. We come, and from our discussion, we would like to inspire those of you who are conscious to come to serious conscious levels of concrete actions for humanity on a daily basis. Those of you not conscious, we come to try at least how to make you think. But we must tell you, to make people think in America is an extremely difficult job. The difficulty arises from the fact that America is a capitalist system. And the capitalist system, which is a stupid, vicious, backward, stupid system, not only seeks to rape the resources and rip off the labor of people, it seeks to confuse them in their thinking to such a degree that it makes them respond to stimuli, and in the act of responding, they think that they are thinking. Of course, you can see examples everywhere. The people in America hate communism. And when you say communism, they're ready to die. They'll pick up a gun and go and shoot it. And when you ask them, what is communism? they want to shoot it even more. They have no understanding of it. And not only do they have no understanding of it, they seek to have no understanding of it. Not only does the capitalist system make them stupid, it then turns around and makes them arrogant in their stupidity. The other day I met a man who was condemning communism. I said, here's a book by Karl Marx. Why don't you read it and learn something about it? Get away from me, you're trying to brainwash me. I said, right. If you have an enemy, it behooves you to know everything about your enemy. People in America, when they react to communism, they think they're thinking in the act of reacting. As a matter of fact, there's not very much thinking done in America at all. Even to test your intelligence, they're not thought. It's only regurgitation. They check your intelligence by multiple choice. And some of the times they tell you A, B, C, D, E. E says, none of the above, don't worry about it. So we come to try and help make you think. Now, we must tell you something about American capitalist system. Unfortunately, such a stupid system, we have to waste time just unraveling. It lets you think that you can think abstractly, and if you've thought abstractly, you've thought. In elementary philosophy, the first statement they give you is the Latin statement, cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. But I'm sure all of you sitting here know that this is not true, because I'm sure all of you sitting here know many who are and do not think. We want to make it clear here, one cannot think abstractly about anything, because thought is nothing other than the clarification of actions for future actions. That is to say, without thought, without action, there can be no thought. You students, if you've never taken physics, you cannot think about physics. Of course, you think about physics. But unless you've taken physics, you cannot think about physics. If you do not know how to swim, you cannot think about swimming. Even if you go to all the swimming meets and you're married to the best swimmer in the world, unless you swim, you cannot think about swimming. If you, even when criticizing all the basketball players when you watch it, do not play basketball, you cannot think about basketball. If you do not work for your people's freedom, you cannot think about your people's freedom. Of course, for an oppressed people, this is important, because for an oppressed people, their biggest enemy is confusion. And those who take the responsibility of speaking on behalf of the people should at least be working for the people. We should have a quick law and say, if you don't work for the people's freedom, when the people's freedom is being discussed, shut up. I can give you some examples. A few days ago, I was speaking to a man. He told me he was concerned about our people, and I shared the same concern. And he told me that he wanted to outline the problems. Well, this, of course, is a great step forward. Sometimes people can't even clearly outline their problems. So to outline your problems is a great step forward. And he informed me, he said, the problem with our people, Brother Kwame, is that we don't have any leaders. I told him, shut up. I said, I'm shut up, of course. If you do not know anything about these Africans, you must know that they have produced some of the greatest leaders that mankind has seen in the last 100 years. I said, if you know nothing of their history, the names of their leaders you will know. You will know Frederick Douglass. You will know Harriet Tubman. You will know Sojourner Truth. You will know Booker T. Washington. You will know W.B. Du Bois. You will have heard of Honorable Marcus Garvey. You will have heard of Malcolm X. You will have heard of Martin Luther King. You will have heard of Rosa Parks. You will have heard of Jesse Jackson. You will have heard of Mandela. You would have heard of Kwame Nkrumah. You would have heard of Sekou Ture. You would have heard of Lumumba. You would have heard of Angela Davis. You would have heard of Minister Farrakhan. You would have heard of Asante Shakur. It is not leaders that we lack. What we lack is organization. We say we must be clear in understanding the problem. Our topic this evening is from Black Power forward to Pan-Africanism. Of course, we're speaking of history here, and we must be very clear. The world is a dialectical world. Things can be used both for positive purposes and for negative purposes, the same thing. The history can be used either to demobilize a people or to inspire a people. It depends upon the conditions and the person using it. If the enemy is using your history, he will use your history to demobilize you. When you are using your history, you must use your history to inspire you. The American capitalist system, in its very presentation of history, presents history to demobilize the people. In the very beginning, generally speaking, history is presented as something dead, something in the past, a mere compilation of dates and facts, and always here and there, history is made by some great person. Thus, even asking history majors of American universities anything about the so-called American Revolution, all they can tell you is 1776 and George Washington. Some may be able to tell you that he never told a lie. Indeed, when he chopped down the cherry tree, he claimed to have done it. Indian killer that he was. When history is presented in this way, it demobilizes you from the very beginning. In the first place, it makes it look something that's happened in the past, and something done by a great person. And after all, since you and I are not George Washington, why even try to make history? Here, you've completely been demobilized. History is alive. It's living all the time. We are making history here tonight. Every human being makes history, either consciously or unconsciously. Of course, if one is oppressed, it is clear that one's master will want one to make history, his history, your history. We say the master will try and tell you that you both have the same history. Even in formal presentation of education, one can see it here. We are told everywhere that Christopher Columbus discovered America in 1492. This presentation of history has a profound effect upon the individual upon whom it is imposed. You can see it clearly. Go around American universities, and though the system is a racist system, you will find the students have some vague understanding of something about Africa before 1492. If nothing other than slaves came from there for whatever reason, because they wanted to run away and be happy in slavery. Or we have some vague understanding of Asia before 1492. Of course, of Europe before 1492, we have a precise understanding. But of the United States of America before 1492, we have absolutely no understanding at all. Of course, this is done purposefully. The American capitalist system wants you to believe that the question of justice is a quantitative question. No, it's a qualitative question. If I steal this man's camera, and I keep it for 5 years, will it belong to me after 5 years? No. When this man die, will it belong to me? Once I have stolen the camera, it can never belong to me. You are told that Christopher Columbus discovered America in 1492 because they do not want you to look before 1492. Of course, the statement is racist. What it means is that nobody's alive until some white man comes along and says, "Oh, I discovered you." But the reason why you are trapped and your intellectual horizon is stifled is simply because they know if you look to America before 1492, then you will know that this land belongs to the Indians. By keeping you not looking before 1492, you will come to have no respect for the Indians. You will think that they have created nothing. That indeed they were a bunch of drunkards and the land didn't belong to them anyway because they didn't know what to do with it. You should know something about the civilization of the American Indians. You must come to know a great deal about them so that you will come to respect them. American imperialism is a shameless system. It has come here, it has made 370 treaties with the American Indians. They who are illiterate could not read and write. The Indians have never broken one. The white man broke everyone. American imperialism is a shameless system. It took the Indians off of their land and put them on infertile land where they couldn't grow crops and would be dependent upon the government. And today when they find out that these infertile lands are rich in mineral resources, they come to put the Indians off of this land too. For Africans, it is even more tragic. When we came to this country as slaves, the only place we could escape and find mutual respect was on the Indians and among the Indians. Consequently, we have a great debt to the Indians. The greatest crime a man or a woman can commit is to be ungrateful. We owe a lot to the American Indians. When we ran away from slavery, it was among them that we found mutual respect. They took us in, gave us wives. Even some of us became chiefs of their tribes. Thus we have a responsibility to everywhere uphold the dignity of the struggle of the Indians by everywhere assisting them unconditionally. Justice is not a quantitative question, it is a qualitative question. And even if there were no students at this university representing the American Indians, there is no reason why their culture must be degraded. This responsibility is imposed upon you seriously. You must do everything possible to wipe out all traces of racism against anybody. The struggle in which the Indians are involved in is a struggle, not for the Indians, but for everyone to become more civilized and to have more respect for those whose land you occupy. This rendition of history, where it is racist, has had a profound effect upon the Africans. We say it comes to demobilize them completely. We know that no one man, no one woman can make history. History is made only by the masses of the people. We are sometimes confused. If students in America would just take a reflection, a serious reflection, at the way history is presented to them, they would see all of its fallacies. This history being presented by one great man and the rest of the people as sheep who follow him is nothing but bourgeois garbage. You take George Washington, as bad as he is, you put him in the middle of Valley Forge by himself, surrounded by the British, he can't do nothing. Hope you know how to swim. But you take the same George Washington, and you surround him with hundreds of people who have the same thoughts he has, determined to make them a reality, and the situation changes drastically. What changes the situation? Not Washington, but the thousands of nameless, faceless people who love justice and come at the drop of a hat to spill their blood to advance humanity. It is the masses, and the masses alone, who make history. You say this confusion is to be found everywhere. For the Africans, it is particularly pathetic. Because not only do we make history, but history is always made by a white man who is not even of us. When one comes to formal education in America, speaking in relationship to the Civil War and the struggle of the slaves here in this country, one is told in one brief sentence that Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves. Especially the state of Illinois. Well, we got to thank old Abe. He was a good white man. I mean, what this does is that it makes our history come, some of us even get so confused that to make our history, we are looking for a good white man. Which is a good white man? Which is the best one for us? Is it Nixon? Is it Kennedy? Only the masses of the people make history. We would like just to take the case of the Civil War and break it down in material reality, exactly what it means. Abraham Lincoln was president of this country when the Civil War started in 1861. He did not issue the Emancipation Proclamation until 1863. The reason why he issued it was because the South was winning. They were whooping the North hands down. The reason they were whooping the North was because they had slave labor. And while these slaves were not used in combatant positions, they were used in every non-combatant position. They dug ditches, they cooked the food, they cleaned the rifles, they washed the uniforms, they took care of the sick. That's all the white South had to do was to fight, and fight they did. Thus, when Abraham Lincoln was losing, after pressure from so many forces, including his generals, who were certainly not concerned with the liberation of the slaves, but with the winning of the war, Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves in 1863. But we must pause here. What did this freedom mean? In concrete terms, it means that on December 31st, 1862, Stokely Carmichael is a slave on Mr. Carmichael's plantation. Mr. Carmichael calls his slaves together on January 1st, 1863, when the proclamation is issued. He reads it to us. Well, from what we understand is it's free. That's what we understand. Does this mean we're free, Mr. Carmichael says, yes, y'all is free. What does that mean? Y'all can do whatever y'all want. Y'all can go wherever you want. We is free. We're free at last, free at last. Now, Stokely, he hates Mr. Carmichael. He hates him with a passion because he hates injustice with a passion. And Mr. Carmichael is the incarnation of injustice. So Stokely, he wants to get him some hat and get him to win big, fast, in a hurry. So, let me go where you want to go. Yes, Stokely, go wherever you want to go. Stokely must get hat. But if he leaves the plantation, by lunchtime, he got to buy him some lunch. And he ain't got no money. If he keeps going by nighttime, he got to find him some place to sleep. And if he ain't got no money, where's he going to go? But you know, Abraham Lincoln, a good white man, and he probably explained with Mr. Carmichael. So Mr. Carmichael, being a good white man, says, Stokely, listen, don't you get upset. All you have to do is go on down to my plantation store here, credit what you need. After the end of cotton picking season, I will give you what belongs to you and take what belongs to me. Old Stokely goes on down and credits. Do you know, when I was a young man, working for the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee in Alabama, Mississippi, and Georgia, I went onto plantations and found families who were there since slavery and were still in debt to the white man. And Abraham Lincoln is a great white man. He freed us from our slave master, whom we done worked for nothing, and the next day put us in debt to him. He sounds just like the International Monetary Fund. The International MF tells us that after Europe has monetary fund, they tell us, and that's what they are. They tell us that after 600 years of raping Africa blind, that after 25 years of independence, we owe them. Just like Abraham Lincoln, we worked for the white man for centuries, and we get free, and we owe him. Abraham Lincoln didn't let the slaves fight. The South was still winning the war. It took him until 1864 to finally let the slaves pick up the gun. And when the slaves picked up the gun, in 1 year, the war was over. Nowhere in your history will you find credit given to Africans for what they do. Even today, this nonsense continues. You will see this capitalist speak media talking about de Klerk, as if this racist speak has released Mandela. It's the blood of the masses of my people that released Mandela. De Klerk never walked one picket line for Mandela. Even the white people all over the world who walk the picket line, they had nothing to do with it. There's the white man, there's a good white man, he's going to solve all our problems. We are the only ones who can solve our problems. And we must look to no one except us. When the enemy has your history in his hands, he will make you think that your history and his history is one and the same. When it comes to the Africans in this country, it's tragic. Most Africans in America, when they begin their history, trace their history to a slave ship. You ask them, why do you know African? Where you come from? I come from Mississippi. Before Mississippi, I don't know. When a people fight for freedom, they can only get inspiration from themselves when they were free. Every man, every woman, every nation is born free. They are oppressed by other men, by other nations. Even a slave woman who gives birth to a child, that child is born free. It's a slave master who enslaves it and says it's his property. But every man, every woman is born free. And if you want inspiration to fight for freedom, you can't start in slavery. If you start in slavery, the best you can hope to be is a good slave. Maybe that's why we look for good slave masters. Thus, if Africans in America want to get inspiration for their liberation struggle, they must begin in Africa. They cannot begin on a slave ship. They have to begin in Africa where they were free. It is here, understanding what they were doing before they were free, that they will get inspiration. It is here that they will see that their state of slavery is not a God-given state, but a man-imposed state, and they will recognize that they have a responsibility to humanity to struggle and struggle and struggle and struggle until they defeat their enemy, and they will defeat their enemy. Oppressed peoples everywhere have an instinctive love of justice. Instinctive. That is to say, even if the enemy is more powerful than they are, they will rise up and fight. A cursory look at history gives us examples everywhere. You will see serfs rising up against feudal lords, getting beaten down, rising up against, getting beaten down, rising up again, getting beaten down, but rising up until they destroy feudalism. The history of slavery in America is here. Slaves rising up against someone, every plantation being beaten down, rising up, being beaten down, rising up until they rise up and destroy it. Justice is not a quantitative question, it is a qualitative question. And when the people are oppressed, until every one of them is wiped out, even if one is left, they will fight, no matter how long the time period. History gives us clear examples here. The Irish come to give us a sterling example, as sterling as the British pound used to be. Over 800 years ago, British imperialism marched into Ireland with the object of dominating the Irish, stealing their land, ripping off their labor. Today, 800 years later, the gallant Irish are still fighting against British imperialism. And it's only a stupid man like Margaret Thatcher who doesn't understand that it takes nothing. The people everywhere struggle for freedom, and this struggle, even if instinctive, continues. Africa gives us some clear examples here. Over 500 years ago, Portuguese colonialism marched into Africa with the object of dominating Africa. Indeed, Portuguese colonialism came to dominate Angola, Mozambique, and Guinea-Bissau. Here, the Portuguese thought that they would exploit Africa forever. Indeed, someone not truly understanding human nature, looking at the material conditions, would think that Portugal would dominate Africa forever. These Portuguese had big cannons. We Africans had spears. These Portuguese had fast boats. We Africans had dugout canoes. But we Africans had an instinctive love of justice. And for 500 years, we fought with them and fought with them and fought with them and fought with them through all forms of struggle until the 1970s we put them out, and never again will Portugal come into Africa in the form of colonialism. It took 500 years of struggle. You must come to understand precisely this aspect of struggle. The American capitalist system, being a stupid system, will try to make you think that in life a human being must try to find a position where they don't struggle, where they sit down and enjoy life. Frederick Douglass said it best, where there is no struggle, there is no progress. You must not take lightly this statement. Progress is eternal. If progress is eternal, struggle is eternal. You must not run from struggle, you must run to struggle. Show me your best student in physics. Show me your best student in physical education, and I will show you a student who struggles with the hardest concepts in these subjects and comes to master them. The student who runs away from difficulties will never make progress. If you know 2 plus 2 is 4, and you do not struggle with 4 plus 4, you will never know it equals 8. As a people, we must fight against capitalism on every level, and the level which seeks to make us lazy is the one where we must fight it the hardest. We must look for struggle, not be afraid of struggle. We must look for difficulties, understanding when you overcome these difficulties, you become more confident in yourself, and the people who have no confidence must find confidence through overcoming difficulties. You must never be afraid of struggle. We say, where there is none, there is no progress. This struggle, the struggle to reclaim our history, is a serious struggle. If you just look at the Africans in America, you will see how terribly, terribly oppressed they are. This country was inhabited after the Indians were wiped out by mainly 2 groups, Europeans and Africans. All Europeans who came to this continent came here voluntarily, hear me well. Even those who were indentured servants, they had a choice: stay in jail in Europe or go to America, be an indentured servant for X number of years and then be free. Even the Irish who were fleeing to potato famine, which was brought upon them by British imperialism, had a choice. Many who fled religious intolerance, coming, but they had a choice: stay in Europe, make it more religiously tolerant, or go to America. Thus every European who got on the boat voluntarily, thinking, no matter how they defined it, that they would have a better way of life for themselves and for their future generations. No African coming to America came here voluntarily. And Africans came to America in the most horrendous Holocaust that mankind has ever seen. The Africans were not running from anything in Africa. As a matter of fact, those Europeans who came to America were discontented with Europe. They had either religious conflict with them, they had economic exploitation with them, they had all sorts of problems. But the Africans, we had no problem in Africa at all. We were quite happy in Africa. Now they bring us, these Europeans came voluntarily, we came in the worst conditions, we've been oppressed, they're having a good life, and they who voluntarily left their home, clings to their home, and we've been snatched from our homes, don't want a home. I ain't no African. This can only come about through oppression. It's clear and logical to me that this capitalist system so oppresses us, it presses us below the level of even a dog. Do you know if you steal a dog from his house and you beat him, abuse him, mistreat him, as soon as the door is open, he's gone. He don't care where. But these Africans in America, they've been beaten, whipped down, struck, and ta-ta-ta-ta. You say, hey brother, let's go to Africa. Go to Africa. America's my only home. Yes. Africa. Africa is your home. The only reason you do not appreciate Africa is because you are ignorant of world history. You must understand me precisely. Any man, any woman, African or not African, who doesn't appreciate Africa knows nothing of world history, not African history. Because any man, any woman knowing anything about world history must appreciate Africa for her great contributions to world civilization. So when we find Africans who say, I ain't no African, we understand that this attitude is based on ignorance. They know nothing about Africa. Our job is not to convince them to be Africans and to be proud they're Africans. Our job is to direct them towards the study of Africa. Once they begin to study Africa, they will love Africa so much that they will let no one mistake them for anything other than that African. They will even stop frying their hair just to make sure they don't get confused. Africans. We know there's no such thing as an inferior society or a superior society. All societies are equal. Anyone speaking superior nonsense is speaking nonsense. All societies produce the same thing in essence. It's only the form that's different. Capitalism comes to confuse us by haphazardly looking at the form and not at the essence. We know that all men are created equally. Of this there isn't the slightest question. But capitalism will have us not look at the essence of the man, but the form of the man. If his skin is white, if his hair is long, etc., then he's supposed to be better. You know, it reaches such ludicrous heights in the society that they will take a woman, march her across the stage in a bathing suit and say, she's the one that will represent America. Just the form. Nothing but the form. I'm going to try just to get that form. The essence of things. All societies are equal. They all produce the same thing necessary for the functioning of the society. All societies produce a way of recording history. All societies produce a way of training the young. All societies produce culture. All societies produce dance. All societies produce music. All societies produce religion. All societies produce all of the life-sustaining functions. Only the form is different. The American Indians produce a religion, a powerful religion. I recommend to you that you come to study it. You will learn quite a great deal about it. Certainly those of you who say you're in ecology, you need to study seriously their religion. Because the reason why they were able to protect the ecology of the country is because of the love that they have for Mother Earth, which they respect and treat as a god. The American Indians' religions were not accepted because of its form. Thus European imperialism thought that the form of Christianity was the form and crushed the American Indian religions. Religions all have the same essence. Their form vary. Some have one for God, some have many for God, some have the fish for God. Some, like the American Indians, come to understand that Earth must be respected as a god. All religions have different forms, but in essence they're the same, thus they're all equal. Religions have but one fundamental purpose. Their purpose is to impose moral obligation upon man and woman. The form is not even considered here. All we want is the essence. Even those of us who are atheists must respect religions because every society produces them, thus representing the aspirations of the masses of the people for justice. We say this aspect of religion must be properly understood. And I tell you that we must be content and happy that there is religion because it imposes moral obligation upon man and woman. I sometimes ask myself, what would George Bush be like if he wasn't a religious man? Imagine the clerk. So we are glad to have them. Africa's contributions to world religions are nothing less than outstanding. We want to take some time here. Again, our purpose is not to convince you to become African, but to convince you of the necessity to study your history. Once you study your history, you will be proud to be an African. The first sacred book in the world, and you have it in your library here, is entitled The Egyptian Book of the Dead. It was written over 7,000 years ago. It was given to the world by Africa. If you will read this book, and of course the title, the translation, The Egyptian Book of the Dead, is the incorrect title. It was translated by some European archaeologists who didn't have a proper understanding. The correct title is something like The Egyptian Book of Coming Forth, but in its title in the library, you will find it as The Egyptian Book of the Dead. If you will read this book, you will find all of the religious stories in the Bible, the Quran, and the Torah tracing themselves to this book, the Egyptian Book of the Dead. Africa gave to the world monotheism, belief in one God. And when Africa gave monotheism to the world, belief in one God, all around Africa there was not monotheism. Some were worshipping the moon, some were worshipping cows, some were worshipping the sun. It was Africa that gave monotheism to the world, belief in one God. It follows logically that the religion of Judaism, chronologically speaking, the religion which gave to the world belief in one God, came from Africa. Africa gave Judaism to the world. Now, everywhere Africa is held up in contempt by racists everywhere. So if we were to say the statement that Africa gave Judaism to the world, which is a correct statement, some people, even Africans, don't believe it. You must read a book. The book is by a man you know him very well. They never mentioned this book, but you know him well. It's called Sigmund Freud. The book I recommend to you is the last book that Mr. Freud wrote. The book is entitled Moses and Monotheism. The conditions under which Mr. Freud wrote this book is of importance to us here this evening, to the point we are leading to. Mr. Freud began writing the book in 1939 in Austria, when the Nazis were advancing. And though the Nazis were advancing, Mr. Freud was willing to risk his life to collect the notes for this book and to run to England to finish the book there before he died. The book is called Moses and Monotheism. If you will take a slight glance at the book, you will see that Mr. Freud, using historical, archaeological, and psychoanalysis proofs, comes to show the world that Moses is nothing other than an African. Mr. Freud in his book comes to show that the early priests of the religion were Africans because they wrote the religion and Africa gave writing to the world. You must come to understand what you did. The first Jews in the world were Africans. So Africans must know precisely what they did. Some racist people are accusing me of being anti-Judaic. This is an insult to me. Mama, I am a conscious African. My people gave Judaism to the world. I can never be against a gift of civilization which my people gave to the world. I can never be anti-Judaic. We say the first Jews in the world were Africans. And these Jews didn't become a Jew because they lacked a state. The first state in the world came from Africa. So these Jews already had a state. As a matter of fact, Judaism found its breeding in Egypt, which wasn't even the first state in the world. Ethiopia was. And there's no question that Ethiopia was all African. So we must not get confused at all. You know, people try to confuse it. We say something can be used for positive reasons or negative reasons. And bad forces will use positive things for bad reasons. Zionism is a political philosophy. It has absolutely nothing to do with Judaism. Zionism is a political philosophy which is racist, illegal, immoral, unjust, and is therefore doomed. Get confused with the two at all. Judaism is a religion. And if you study religions, you will see that all religions have running through them a thread that says that in order to be redeemed, one must suffer. In Christianity, it reaches such heights that the Son of God, Jesus Christ himself, is made to shed his blood for the redemption of the sins. Matter of fact, he, Jesus Christ himself, comes to say with all great force, there shall be no redemptions of sins without the shedding of blood. If you understand the theory of Judaism, you will not get confused. There is no such thing as a chosen people in the sense that God chooses you. All gods are non-discriminating God. How could a God make children and choose one child over the other? Even our parents can't do that. How is God going to do that? But there can be a chosen people. To be a chosen people, you must choose God. To be a chosen people, you must choose God. And once you've chosen God, obviously God will choose you. But now when you choose God in the Jewish religion, it means, and this is the theory of Judaism, that you accept all the sufferings that humanity will heap upon you for the redemption of humanity. Certainly this must be saluted by all men and women, this attitude towards life. Zionism, we say, have nothing to do with this. Zionism found its political expressions in 1897 in a place called Bâle, Switzerland. The man who came to be the founder of political Zionism, the founder of the Jewish state, is a man by the name of Theodor Herzl, H-E-R-Z-L. You must know this man. You must come to know all these things because Zionism affects us as a people. Seriously. I mean, Zionism so affects us that we pay more taxes than Zionists in this country, and our money goes to Israel to bomb us in Egypt, in Tunisia, and in Uganda, and to break the arms of Palestinian students. We must come to understand that all of our political elected officials, all of them bow down before the altar of Israel. Unconditional support. Matter of fact, before they get elected, they got to wear a yarmulke and go and do more. Look at this one, Jenkins in New York. He's going to give Israel more money than Koch gave them. So it affects us seriously when we come to know it. But you must not get confused by it. Once you know its history, you will laugh at Zionists and you will not confuse them. The Orthodox Jews in Brooklyn say, a Jew cannot be a Zionist and a Zionist cannot be a Jew. And they're absolutely correct. Totally correct. This man Herzl was an atheist. Do you understand what an atheist is? An atheist is not someone who does not believe in God. An atheist is one who makes the affirmative statement that God does not exist. This man Herzl has a book, his diary. He also has another book entitled The Jewish State, both of which you should read. In his diary, Mr. Herzl comes to say that he's an atheist, so he knows God doesn't exist. Now listen to this. Herzl says God doesn't exist, and he sets out to find the land that God promised to his chosen people. If he ain't Satan in disguise, the Pope got to be a socialist. Zionism is a legal philosophy. You mustn't ever get confused with it. They will confuse you. One called me an anti-Semite. Could you hear that? Oh. I want you to go and look properly at this word Semite. You mustn't use words lightly, you know. The word Semite is a scientific word with biological specifications. Yasser Arafat is a Semite. Golda Meir is not a Semite, she's a Cossacoid. Sharon is a Cossacoid. Abba Eban is a Cossacoid. They're not Semites. The Palestinians are Semites. Zionism is against Palestinians. It is Zionism that is anti-Semitic. I support Mr. Yasser Arafat, and he's a Semite. I give unconditional support to the Palestine Liberation Organization, and all conscious people must do so, especially those of you in America, because America gives unconditional support to Israel. You must give unconditional support to the Palestine Liberation Organization. The Palestinian people must do so. Africa's contributions to Christianity are overwhelming. We pause a little because so many Africans in America say they love Christianity, it's their religion, and you know, we're more enthusiastic about Christianity than any other aspect of our lives. If we could collect the energies given off on Sunday mornings at our churches throughout the world, collected and aim it against the enemy, we would have been free. But do you know these Africans allow capitalism to make them lazy because that's its job? The job of capitalism is to make you lazy. The job of God is to make you take what they tell you and regurgitate it. If Africans in America who were Christians really understood Christianity, they would have to love Africa. This alone would make them proud of being Africa. Africa's contributions to Christianity, we say, are overwhelming. If you would look carefully in the Bible, let me tell you something in the first place. Most of these Christians who can read and write, they've never read the Bible from cover to cover. And before they die and go home and see their Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, they ain't got the slightest intentions of reading it. I said capitalism will make you stupid and then make you arrogant and stupidity. I met one the other day, called himself a Christian. I asked him, have you read the Bible? No, I haven't read the Bible. I said, can you read? Yes, I can read. Well, when I was in 5th grade, I was reading in 7th grade. I said, you can read, you call yourself a Christian and you ain't read the Bible? I laughed. He got annoyed, but I'm a revolutionary. Truth never quivers before lies. On the contrary, truth crushes lies without pity and without mercy. I laughed louder. He got upset, you know what he told me? He said, listen, Kwame Ture, you don't have to read the Bible to be a Christian. I applauded him. You are absolutely correct. One doesn't have to read the Bible to be a Christian. But if one is a Christian, and one can read and write, and one doesn't read the Bible, one is a stupid Christian. The Chinese say if you make a mistake, and you know it's a mistake, and you don't correct the mistake, you've made your second mistake. If there are Christians here in this audience and you've never read the Bible, I encourage you to correct this mistake. Read the Bible from cover to cover. If Africans would read the Bible from cover to cover, we said they would be proud to be Africans. The first country mentioned in the Bible, Genesis 2, verse 13, is Ethiopia. Depending upon your version of the Bible, it's either called Cush, K-U-S-H, or Cush, C-U-S-H. Any authoritative source will ensure you that Cush is the ancient name for Ethiopia. Genesis 2, verse 13. The first church in the world came out of Africa. The first monastery in the world came out of Africa. The very intellectual development of the church came out of Alexandria, which is in Egypt, which still is in Africa. Africa's contributions are overwhelming. If you would read the Bible carefully, you would see that Africa is mentioned throughout the Bible. Europe is not mentioned until near the very end, near Revelations. These are facts, and you who are biblical scholars will bear me out. Do you know that I walk into African churches throughout the world, in Africa, in the Caribbean, in South America, in Central America, in the United States of America, and wherever I walk into a picture of a white Jesus, replete with blonde hair and blue eyes. Do you know, when I see this, I have to feel pity for these Africans. I would consider that if one was a Christian, one would have some understanding of the history of Christianity. I would assume that if one said that Jesus Christ was one's life's idol and one's life's dream, and it is one's whose footsteps one was following, one would know everything about his life. As a matter of fact, you know more about the lives of movie stars than you know about Jesus Christ, and call yourself Christians. When Jesus Christ was in trouble and everybody was looking for his head, it was to Africa he went as a young man. It was Africa that protected him. It was Africa that grew him up physically, spiritually, intellectually, in every way, preparing him for his works in his later life. Anyone knowing anything of the history of Jesus Christ, the history of Christianity, knows that Jesus Christ never saw Europe. He never stepped his foot in it. Yet everywhere they paint Jesus Christ white. If you will do the slightest research, you will see that this white Jesus, replete with blonde hair and blue eyes, is nothing other than the uncle of the artist who painted the picture. But everywhere Jesus is held as a white man, of course this has a debilitating effect upon Africans. Especially when the Bible says that Jesus had hair like lamb's wool. Anyway, those of you who are Christians have a serious job. Africa's contributions to Islam are overwhelming. When the Prophet Muhammad was preaching his just principles in Mecca, the feudal lords of Mecca came to attack him. Before the Prophet was strong enough, he had to retreat. In retreating, he gave orders to his disciples. Go to Africa, he said, you'll find what you're looking for. Following the orders of the prophets, the disciples went to Ethiopia. The feudal lords of Ethiopia had relationships with the Ethiopians, political, diplomatic, commercial. They pursued the disciples there. When they arrived, they said to the Ethiopians, give us the disciples, we want to execute them. The Ethiopians refused. Not only did they refuse, they protected the disciples. And when the prophet had been called to Medina by a people who wanted a just prophet, the Ethiopians themselves conducted the disciples to rejoin the prophet, when once having rejoined him, they could spread Islam rapidly throughout the world. We have, just in passing, given you 5 of Africa's great contributions to world civilization in the arena of religion. The first sacred book in the world came from Africa. Monotheism, belief in one God, came from Africa. Judaism, this religion was given to the world by Africa. Christianity was stabilized for the world by Africa, and Islam, at a time of danger, was saved for the world by Africa. Which man, which woman, African or non-African, knowing these facts, could not have appreciation for Africa? The question then is clear. Your history can only belong to you, but the only way your history can belong to you is when you are involved in your history. Capitalism confuses us everywhere. They will go and tell you, oh, you went to hear Kwame Ture last night. You know, the trouble with him is that when he speaks, he makes everything cut and dry, everything wet and hot, everything black and white. There's no middle area, there's no gray area. And they say in life there's always gray area. They're lying. Yeah. The capitalist system doesn't lie some of the time. It lies all of the time. Even when it tells the truth, it's the result of lying. Well, you can do it anytime. You know, bring me your biggest liar at the university, put him up before the people, ask him, ask her. Must a man, must a woman at all times, under all conditions, tell the truth to their fellow men, their fellow women? They must say yes, even while lying. And so American capitalist system lies all of the time, not some of the time. They say that you must come to understand properly your history. They will come to confuse you and say that this is that. In the area of tactics, in the area of strategy, there is a gray area. There's a middle ground. But in the area of principles, there is no middle ground. And when Kwame Ture speaks, he speaks of freedom. He speaks of justice. And here, these are principles, not strategies. There is no middle ground. You are students. You must know there is no middle ground when you take a test. Either you cheat or you do not. There is no middle ground. You students, either you believe in God or you do not. There is no middle ground. And when you start doubting God, you have stopped believing in God. So don't get confused. Don't think that you still doubting God and also believing in Him. No. Once you start doubting God, you start believing in God, because any time you compromise a principle, you have abandoned it. If your people are oppressed and you are not involved in the struggle to liberate your people, by your very act of inaction, you are against your people. There is no middle ground. You must properly understand it. If your mother is being raped and you put your hands behind your back and say, I ain't got nothing to do with this, you are against your mother. If your people are being exploited and you are happily watching Dallas and Dynasty, you are against your people. It's as simple as that. The point must be properly understood, because capitalism will try to confuse you. You will say, well, look, I don't work against the people actively. I don't work for the CIA. I don't try to sabotage the people. But if the people are oppressed and you're doing nothing for the people, you are against the people. There is no middle ground on the struggle for justice. Either you're for justice or you're for injustice. And you can be for injustice passively. So anytime your people are oppressed and you ain't doing nothing for them, you are against them. There's no middle ground. There's no gray area. You're just in the camp of the enemy. It's as simple as that. I organized for the All African People's Revolutionary Party. Ours is a revolutionary party. We are not afraid of anything. Osajifo, Kwame Nkrumah, one of Africa's greatest sons, come to tell us that the secret of life is to have no fear. The only thing we fear is being irresponsible to our people. That's all. We're not afraid of American capitalism. We're going to destroy it. We're not afraid of the FBI or the CIA. We'll laugh at these pigs. They're going to be destroyed. And they will be destroyed. And they are pigs. They are pigs. I mean, they are for real pigs. You know, when I was a young man working in SNCC, in the deep south of Mississippi, when they talk about terrorism, I laugh, because don't nobody know terrorism like us. I mean, we've seen naked white terrorism. And so when I was working in the south there, in the early days with other SNCC people who were confused and thought the FBI, thought like Martin Luther King, that the federal government was our friend, when they would find a strong brother or sister standing up for the movement, they would run quickly and say, we have to protect this brother. So they'd run and tell the FBI, they said, listen, there's men that leave here, and Mr. Herbert is a strong man, and the Ku Klux Klan wants him, so we must protect him. You know what the pigs would do? They would give the name to the Ku Klux Klan, and they would kill Mr. Lee. These are facts. It's in your history. You must come to know it. As Africa is my mother, I'm telling you the truth. Just 2 weeks ago, I had the great honor of spending the night in Minnesota at the house of Wabunini. Wabunini is whom you know as Vernon Bellecourt, whom I encourage you to go and listen to on Monday at Monday, February 26th from noon to 1:30 in the Eleni Union. I spent the night at his house. I've known Wabunini for a long time. I'm not stupid. I know that I've got to know the American Indians and support them, and I stay close to them every time I get a chance, and they've taught me so much. I will forever be grateful to them. I don't let the white man tell me about the Indians through the cowboys. I go directly to the Indians. Wabunini went to Panama before the invasion. There he had a meeting with indigenous Indians who were fighting against the dictatorial regimes in South and Central America, which are all backed by American imperialism. Yeah, at this meeting, Mr. Wabunini took pictures, and when he came back to his home, because Minnesota is his home, he took the pictures to a laboratory. He will tell you about the case himself. You know what they did? The FBI went and took the pictures. You know why these pigs took the pictures? Because they want to give them to the death squads to kill all these Indians. I know these pigs. They're terrible pigs. Woo! But they're going to be crushed. As a matter of fact, we tell the leading Georgie Porgy terrorist that just like Winston Churchill came to rule over the dismemberment of the British Empire, so George Bush will rule over the dismemberment of the FBI and the CIA. The FBI is stupid. Yes, they're stupid. You know, did you ever hear of a white girl called Patricia Hertz? You must go do some study on this. Not too long ago, there was a little white girl called Patricia Hertz. She was in the aristocracy of this country. I mean aristocracy, blue blood capitalist. And for whatever reasons, she decided to flip out and to join what they call a revolutionary movement. And her little group went around and they ripped off banks and they committed acts of violence against the state. And the FBI had a picture everywhere, and they were looking everywhere for her, and they will say they will get her, and they never got her until she gave herself up. As bad as they are, now you know if they couldn't find a little white girl, how are they going to find us? They're stupid! Let me give you a clear example of your history, living history. You know, those of us who complain about the conditions in our community are doing nothing. That's why we complain. Those who are doing something ain't got no time to complain. I hear them all the time. Oh, there's so much drugs in our community. There's so much crime in our community. Shut up. You ain't doing nothing for the people no how. You doing something you won't be crying? Yes. Brother came to me and said, oh, what are we going to do? We're an endangered male species. You know, everywhere they attack us, what they going to do? I said, if they wipe us out, good, because then they got to face our sisters, and there's some real fighters better than we are. Africa gave the first queens to the world. The first. I tell you, this capitalist system will confuse you. They had a picture called Cleopatra, and they brought a white woman named Elizabeth. Now, I know you know nothing about Africa's classical history, but I know you know everything about Greek. And if you go back and look at Greek history, Greek civilization, you will see women were totally oppressed in Greek society. They couldn't even dream about participating in voting, let alone becoming a queen. Yet Africa gave the first queens to the world, and these queens looked just like you and me. And you too. Well, they didn't fry their hair, but they were you. These were Africa's queens. African women, as queens, were fighters. If you look and take a cursory look at African history, you will see that whenever a queen was on the throne, Africa progressed economically, socially, technologically, in every arena. And if a queen was on the throne and the enemy invaded, there was no compromise at all. Of course, if a brother was on the throne, well, we're talking about the sisters. Anyway, African women are oppressed today. You see what depths they've fallen to? Yes. They are oppressed by their men in every area except one. The one area that men cannot oppress them is in the front lines fighting for their people. Everywhere you look at the history of Africa, you will see our women up front. Those who never participated talk nonsense. Oh, during the 60s, women were oppressed. They know nothing of what they speak. They don't even know the history. How many of you here know the Black Panther Party? Raise your hand. Just know about the Black Panther Party. Heard about it. Thank you. How many of you heard of a woman by the name of Assata Shakur? Raise your hands. Now, let me tell you something. Those of you who say you've heard of the Black Panther Party and you've never heard of Assata Shakur, you don't know the Black Panther Party. You know television is going to confuse you. Even the eyes on the prize will confuse you. Don't get carried away. Don't get carried away. If you know anything about the Black Panther Party, you know it's split like all movement in two sections, a reactionary movement and a revolutionary movement. The reactionary movement were led by those who today are Republicans, preachers in the Mormons, selling their pants and pork chop barbecue and what else, I don't know. But the revolutionary wing of the Black Panthers transformed itself to the Black Liberation Army. And the Black Liberation Army was ruled and is still ruled and dominated by a sister by the name of Assata Shakur. A-S-S-A-T-A, last name Shakur, S-H-A-K-U-R. That's a rough sister. You know, we got some rough sisters. Look at her. She's as rough as Harriet Tubman, same size too. She was head of the Black Liberation Army. You know what the Black Liberation Army do? They go around and kill racist cops. They even drop hand grenades on the police cars. They rip off banks and take the money and use it to buy guns and give it to other revolutionaries to continue the struggle. And the leader of it is Assata Shakur. Now in the 70s, the FBI were looking for her. She was on their 10 most wanted list. She was #1, leading terrorist, and she was right in New York, giving orders, dealing with them, and they couldn't find her. She made an error, and she took a trip on the New Jersey Turnpike, and the police there, in some surge, stopped them, and there was a shootout. A policeman was killed, her husband was killed, she was wounded, and the third soldier of the Black Liberation Army got away. Listen, the FBI, they were ecstatic. Everywhere they were writing, look, 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 we found her, we caught her, she's in jail. Oh, they were having a heyday. They had found her. They put her in jail. And she was put in jail in New Jersey. Do you know the Black Liberation Army broke into the jail in New Jersey, broke her out of jail, she's now in Cuba, and the FBI don't even know how she got out of jail. You must know Assata Shakur. She's a rough sister and she's your history. I just want to tell you one thing about her before I proceed or to our conclusion. And then she has a book, an autobiography, and you need to read it. You need to know who your history is. This television will not tell you who your history is. Even I laugh at them when they talk about King. The other day I was in Atlanta, Georgia, there around King's birthday, and these in Atlanta, Georgia, Clark University, sisters were so enthusiastic. I asked them all, how many of you love Martin Luther King? Every hand in the house went up. Some tried to touch the sky. Keep your hands up, said I, if you read 2 books about Martin Luther King. Every hand went down. They don't know King. They know what the television told them about King. They don't know anything about King. Matter of fact, when this television gets through with King, they make him light. I'm telling you, if you listen to King, King's I Have a Dream speech could never be his best speech. It's one of his most mediocre speeches. If you know King, that's no speech for King, that's a mediocre speech. King's heavy statements even are never said. I laugh all the time. King had some ones that I like. King had one that said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. You never hear them tell you this. King said, if a woman has nothing for which he's willing to die, he's got nothing for which he's willing to live. King had some heavy statements. But they don't give it to you. It's not their job to give it to you. So anyway, these sisters, you know, they don't know King. They don't even care about King. If you care about King, you would read King. What King said for King. And not let the television give you King. This television will tell you about these sisters like Assata Shakur, who in the Black Panther Party, yet they will tell you about the Black Panther Party. Somebody told me they saw Ayatollah Price talking about the Black Panther Party. I asked, did they show Assata? They said no. I laughed. Because Assata Shakur is still alive and still fighting. They don't want to show you the ones who are fighting, they want to show you the ones who stopped, to let you think that people don't continue the fight. He was reading a book, but before I leave her, let me tell you what she said. And this is for the sisters, and I'm hiding behind Assata now. She said that she never liked to fry her hair. And she said the reason that she hated most is whenever she made love, she couldn't get down because she was afraid she would sweat and it would mess up the curls. Has anybody read the book? Am I lying? And then, now see, am I lying? That's what she said. She said that when, I'm so glad you read it. She said that when the natural, because you just the right one to come in. She said when the natural came in, she was one of the first ones to wear natural. Because when she made love, she could get down. Now this is what Assata says. I don't know for the sisters, but I know what she says is true. That I know. Revolutionary Party. Our party, founded by Kwame Nkrumah, guided by the ideology of Nkrumhism, Tureism, has a clear objective. And we say that this objective is the only solution for the problems of our people scattered all over the world. Pan-Africanism. Pan-Africanism is the total liberation and unification of Africa under scientific socialism. Until Africa is free, unified, and socialist, no African anywhere in the world will ever be free. Capitalism will confuse you. In the last month, this capitalist press has been wreaking havoc with the minds of people. I saw George Bush come before the people the other night and told them that communism is tumbling. George Bush, he works for the CIA. And the CIA, they lie all the time. He's a liar. He knows as well as I do that there's no communist country in the world. He knows it. The country to which America directed the hatred of the people was to the country they call Russia. The correct title of Russia is the USSR, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. The people in Russia tell us they want to be communist. That's what they want. Thus we assume that as soon as they become communist, they shall be the first to change their name from the USSR to the USCR and become the Union of Soviet Communist Republics. There are socialist states in the world who are trying to construct communism, but there is no communist state in the world. We are socialists, and we're not confused. We know there are only two economic systems in the world, capitalism or socialism. And there can only be two, simply because every economic system must answer one fundamental question. Who will own and control the wealth of the country? Who will own and control the means of production? The question can only be answered two ways. Either a few will own or everybody will own. It's as simple as that. The American capitalist system will confuse you. They reckon half of the people talking about socialism is crumbling. Socialism is crumbling. You never judge a system by its adherents. You always judge a system by its principles. Who in this audience judges Christianity by Christians? Were you to judge Christianity with Christians, it tumbled a long time ago, starting with Judas. One never judges a system by its adherents, it's judged by its principles. And if you don't judge Christianity by Christians, you can't judge socialism by socialists. You judge it by its principles. And since Christianity has been betrayed by so many, starting with popes, from Judas all the way through popes, now to even the smallest Christian, and its principles are still intact, what makes you think the principles of socialism are not still intact? We are not confused here. The principles of socialism are intact. And not only are they intact, we tell the entire world, the world is going socialist. These pigs don't confuse anybody but themselves. We are socialists, and we say Africa must be unified and socialist. We are coming to the conclusion, and we're speaking about black power to Pan-Africanism. We have demonstrated that the people have an instinctive love of justice, but the people cannot win a liberation struggle based on instinct. People are not on the same level as animals. People have the ability to think, and when they come to struggle against an enemy, they must think. Thus, in order to defeat an enemy, you cannot defeat an enemy based on emotion. You cannot defeat an enemy based on sentiment. You can only defeat an enemy based on scientific and rational reasoning. Our people have been waging and delivering heavy blows against the enemy, but all the blows we've been delivering have been spontaneous blows. In order for us to make advance, we must come now to organize the masses of our people, the only makers of history. They must come to be properly organized. Thus, to go from black power to Pan-Africanism, we must go from spontaneity to rational organization. You must come to understand this properly. The capitalist system will confuse us. Since the 60s, they've been writing all sorts of nonsense about the progress that we have made as a people. And this progress is individual progress. I don't know about other people, but I know about my people. Individual progress can never be made a yardstick for them. Only the masses and their progress will be a yardstick for us, simply because no individual makes any advancement without the struggle of the masses of the people. Anytime you see an individual become a mayor, he didn't become a mayor because of his individual talents and worth. He became a mayor because the masses spilled their blood for the advancement of the struggle. Thus, that position does not belong to that mayor, it belongs to the people and must be used for the struggle of the people. Anytime this mayor becomes corrupt, he has betrayed the blood of his people. Indeed, if you will look at your history, you will see that there is no advancement we make in this country without the masses shedding their blood, not one. Indeed, we make no advancement in this country without shedding our blood. No one sitting in this audience can give me any example where we as a people have made advancements against this terroristic system without shedding our blood. Even to sit in a filthy 5 and 10 cent store, we must shed our blood. To get on a bus where we pay just like everybody else and ride where we want to ride, we must shed our blood. To get our children into the universities, which we pay our taxes where everybody goes, we must shed our blood. To get the right to vote, which any immigrant gets the minute he puts his foot here, we must shed our blood. This is your history. You must know your history. You make no advancements without shedding blood. Let logic be imposed upon you. Let us come together, organize ourselves rationally, shed blood one time, make revolution, and overthrow the capitalist system. Be confused with the history of others. Others may come to this university by their individual worth, but none of you came here by individual worth. All of you occupy a seat which was paid for with the blood of your people. This seed does not belong to you. It belongs to your people. And everything you acquire here must be used for your people. If you say you have to redeem America through your blood, you must know precisely what that means. Capitalist system is a vicious system, stupid and backward. It will make everything a commodity. It will take us as human beings and make us the commodity sellers. It will come and make knowledge a commodity. Knowledge can never be a commodity. Knowledge has one fundamental purpose. Its purpose is to alleviate the sufferings of humanity. Knowledge has but one fundamental purpose. Its purpose is to alleviate the sufferings of humanity. Anytime you acquire knowledge, this knowledge belongs to your people. Your people suffer because they lack knowledge. You have the golden opportunity to come here, acquire this knowledge, and help your people, and rather than do this, you betray your people just by not acquiring knowledge for your people. That is why we say that our people cannot be judged by individual advancements, only by progress of the masses of the people. America is more ripe for revolution in the 1990s than it was in the 1960s. The objective conditions are worse today than they were before. And the consciousness of the people is higher today than it was before. Thus, the factors needed for revolution are clear: the objective conditions and the subjective conditions. There is no question that the conditions of the masses of our people are worse today than they were in the 60s. And the conscience higher. The American capitalist system will try and confuse you and make it appear as if the people are less conscious today than they were in the 60s. Garbage, nonsense, lies. Which young girl 10 years old today is less conscious of her responsibility to fight against women's oppression than a woman 10 years old in the 60s? Women are more conscious today of their responsibility to struggle for their liberation, not less. The handicapped in this country is more conscious of their responsibility to struggle for amenities to make their life easier, not less. Even the right wing in this country has demonstrated it itself has become more politically conscious. They are involved in activities which in the 60s they considered to be communistic. Not only that, they've come to introduce violence as a legitimate means of obtaining political goals. Where they disagree with buses, they burn them. Where they disagree with abortion, they bomb clinics. Everywhere you can see it. We say America is more ripe for revolution today than it was in the 60s. In the 60s, it was the African masses and the African masses alone who was fighting the system. The right wing was supporting the system and supporting the status quo. But today, the right wing is not supporting the system nor the status quo. Today, the right wing is calling for change. So is the left wing. They're not calling for the same change. No. But the fact that both are calling for change make the possibility of change easier. America is more ripe for revolution today than ever before. And as everywhere, the Africans must play the key role here. They must come to transform their behavior in relationship to their struggle from spontaneity to permanent organizations. Indeed, we are the only people in the world who can rise up, take on the biggest imperialist power in the world, America, in a weekend, burn down 270 of our big cities, and sit down for 30 years. We need to struggle permanently. And the only way we can struggle permanently is when our people are organized permanently. Understand what we're saying here? We are not calling for an ad hoc organization. Our enemy is not ad hoc. We are calling for an eternal organization. When the Portuguese came to Africa for 500 years, they dominated us for 500 years. It wasn't ad hoc. In America, we are dominated until this day, exploited everywhere. It is not ad hoc. Just the way they exploit us and the contempt they have for us will cause this system to fall. In the 1960s, we had no African mayors in this country. Today we have 305. And these are mayors of the biggest cities in this country: New York, Newark, Gary, Detroit, Chicago, Washington, D.C., Birmingham, Atlanta, New Orleans, Los Angeles, etc., etc. All of these mayors, with the exception of one, belong to the Democratic Party. We have 20-odd congresspeople, all in the Democratic Party. We have on local levels, in terms of elected officials, some 5,700 in the Democratic Party. We as a people have more elected officials in the Democratic Party than any other ethnic group in the country. Yet we have no power in the Democratic Party at all. The Democratic Party is our enemy. It has always been our enemy. Indeed, it's the enemy of humanity. America is a very funny country. It's the only country in the world where the people will join a political party in which you will find the super rich and the super poor in the same party. You will find Kennedy and a sharecropper in the same party, and they tell you, of course we're equal, yes. Well, I'm just as equal as Kennedy, he only got one vote in here. The American capitalist system will so confuse the people that it will let them believe that you can have political equality, economic inequality, and be equal. In order to be equal, one must have political equality and economic equal opportunity for all. Thus, the means of production must never belong to a small sector of the society. It must belong to the entire sector. Africa is your home. We want you to help organize your people. In fact, we come to tell you that if you really want to go from black power to Pan-Africanism, if you want to qualify your struggle, you must take it from spontaneity to organization. I will give you an example of yourself right here. I don't even know you're at school, but I'm willing to bet you that you will come to school and sit down. And some white racist remark will come. Maybe some white racist will start making up some signs and just insulting you all over the campus. For the next day, boy, you'll be hot. You see them signs? Let's go. Let's pick it. Let's take over the administration building. You do all that for one day, and then you sit down. And you wait till they provoke you again. This is a stupid way for people to conduct their liberation struggle. That means their actions and their advancement is dependent upon the provocation of the enemy. A people who seek their liberation must have their own internal dynamism. They must decide when to hit the enemy, how to hit the enemy, and what sacrifices they're willing to pay for the victories they are seeking. This can only be done through organization. We have said that if you say you love your people and you're not doing anything for your people, you do not love your people. The only way you can love your people is through actions. Concrete, daily actions which advance revolutionary struggle. Your people will be free. The only question you must ask yourself is, what contribution shall I make to this noble cause? Our purpose for coming here this evening is to recruit the most conscious Africans here to come and work for our party. Those who recognize already from the little we've said the necessity of having a revolutionary party with a Pan-African base. Those of you recognizing this, when you go out the door, you will find comrades just like you, because they make sacrifices more than you for the people, who've traveled everywhere. They're students, workers, give up time to come in the back to help organize you. If you're interested in our party, you will sign up with them. But listen, ours is a revolutionary party. When you come to join our party, the first thing we ask you is, are you willing to give up 30 minutes a day for the people? If you're not, don't waste our time. But don't let capitalism confuse you. I know the capitalist pigs. You say, well, last night we went to hear Brother Kwame Ture. I heard him in the 60s, he was crazier then, young and crazy. Now he's older and crazier. Nothing wrong with that. Malcolm X said, extreme conditions must have extreme solutions. And the conditions are more extreme today than they were in the 60s. They say, oh, he told us to join his party, he's revolutionary, he's talking about socialism, I ain't in it. He told us to join his party, he's talking about Africa, I ain't got nothing to do with that. But this is what the brother told you. He told you, if you don't join his party and you say you love your people, you better join another organization working for your people. If you don't belong to the All-African People's Revolutionary Party, you should belong to the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. If you don't belong to this one, you should belong to the Urban League. If you don't belong to this one, you should belong to the Nation of Islam. If you don't belong to this one, you should belong to the Black Liberation Army. But you cannot say you love your people, want your people to advance in their struggle, if you are not helping them to advance. The struggle which we have on our hands is a struggle which cannot be solved by a few of us, even with the best intentions. Only all of us putting our energies together will solve this problem. Only all of us in an organized, rational, scientific way coming to deal with the enemy will overcome the enemy. Your people must be free. They will only be free, we say, when you advance the struggle by coming to organize them. If you truly love your people, you must organize your people. Then if you've heard any message from me tonight, let it be this. If you're not in an organization fighting for your people, you are against your people. And if you truly love your people, you will come and help organize your people so we can hurry up and move on to victory. Thank you. Ready for the revolution.
Lecture. I'm sure you all have some questions that you might want to ask. We're going to have a few minutes of question and answers. Somebody will be up here directing which microphone can pose the questions. That will be Dave Hutchinson. And I'd just like to remind you that if you'd like to talk further with Kwame Ture, there will be a reception where there will be food and you can interact with him and learn more about the party. That will be right after here in Latzer Hall, the University YMCA. If anybody would like to pose questions, please step towards the microphones.
Before we begin with any questions, I'd like to reiterate that we'd like to have the questions posed as briefly as possible, so it looks like we have a lot of questions right now. But, is there anybody with a question? Okay, try to keep it as brief as possible. Greg?
Back in the 60s, Minister Malcolm seemed to have the philosophy that he wanted to, he called the struggle for human rights rather than civil rights, and he wanted to bring the United States before the UN to indict them for the violation of the UN Charter, so that he could bring the support of millions of people around the world, black, brown, yellow, to come and help us fight the enemy here in this country. How do you feel about this philosophy?
It's correct and it's being carried on. It's being carried on in different areas under, for example, the work of reparations, which is being carried on by the African People's Socialist Party in this country and the New African People's Organization. There is also another organization, the Association of the African American Association for Minority Rights, which itself is drawing up a petition to take it before the UN on the question of human rights. So this work is continuing.
Go ahead, Rob. Could you outline briefly the platform of the All-African People's Revolutionary Party?
The platform of the All-African People's Revolutionary Party is, number one, that our ideology is entrism to reason. That is to say, it comes from our culture. We understand that your ideology must come from your culture. The objective of our party is Pan-Africanism, the total liberation and unification of Africa under scientific socialism. Our party is a revolutionary party which is forced to resolve certain contradictions, the most basic of which is that Africa is the richest continent on the face of the earth. And wherever you find Africans on the continent or off the continent, they are the poorest people on the face of the earth. This contradiction must be resolved, and of course, the African Revolution will resolve it. Since we are revolutionaries, we understand that revolution is made by three segments of the society: workers, peasants, and the revolutionary intelligentsia. Our people's history demonstrates to us that the workers and peasants are always ready for struggle. As a matter of fact, the history of all revolutions demonstrates usually that it's usually the intelligentsia that betrays the revolution, the petty bourgeoisie. They come to urge the people on in the interest of the people, and when they seize power, they always turn against the people. You can certainly see it here from the 60s, but those who struggled for the people, after arriving at such power, they came to tell the people that there was no longer any need to struggle, because they had arrived at certain positions. We understand that our people are quick to mobilize, but difficult to organize. And we understand that it's not the mobilization of our people that we must have, but the organization of our people. And we understand, as Karl Marx correctly says, that ideas become material reality when the masses take hold of them. Thus our task is to organize the revolutionary intelligentsia so that they will come together, form cadre, and be able to rapidly, politically educate the masses of our people. Thus our program is, of course, the building of our party. Our people are disorganized, and we feel it is stupid for anyone to take on any action for liberation unless you have an organized basis. Thus our first task is the building of our party. And as we said, our first strategy here is the revolutionary intelligentsia. Now you know the African bourgeoisie is the most corrupt and the most disgusting in the world. And her students are the most corrupt and the most disgusting in the world. They betray their people quickly. They get knowledge which their people have sweated for them to get, and as soon as they get it, they run out of the community quick, as fast as they can. But these are difficulties that we must face. We do not run from them. We have to work with our revolutionary intelligentsia and make them responsible to the people. This is the program, the immediate program of our party. Of course, you must know our party is worldwide. We have chapters in Africa, in the Caribbean. We are doing work in South America, Brazil. We're not as strong as we want to be. There was a military regime there in power for over 20-something years and made our organizing work a little bit difficult, but we are still organizing there. We have chapters, of course, in Europe and, of course, throughout America.
Is this transition from capitalist economies to socialist economy, the revolution, is that necessary through violent means? Can it be democratic?
Oh, violent means are very democratic.
I'm talking about through legislation instead of...
Well, then that should mean then the word democratic should not be used, because would you say that the fight against Hitler was not a democratic fight? It's a democratic fight, of course. So violence can be democratic. You're asking whether or not it would be violent means or non-violent means, because I want to be precise. I think the reason you're asking this question is because of the demonstration of the character of the struggle since the 60s, especially with Martin Luther King. Ture, a noble son of Africa, says that the only man, the only woman that doesn't make a mistake is a man or a woman who does nothing. Martin Luther King made mistakes. And we who truly love our people, we are truly strugglers for the people, must come to look at these mistakes and correct these mistakes. One of the mistakes that Martin Luther King made was that he took nonviolence, which is a tactic in a violent world, and made it a principle. As an honest man, he came to compound the error. As an honest man, he understood that a principle could not be compromised. Thus, he was forced to say, the only way we can get our liberation at all times, under all conditions, is through non-violence. We said that King made an error here. King informed us that he got this non-violence from Mahatma Gandhi. And if you will read King, you will see that King was a brilliant man. He studied seriously this non-violence under Mahatma Gandhi, even picking up the Hindu terms and understanding them quite profoundly. But if you would look at Mahatma Gandhi, you would know that Mahatma Gandhi knew that non-violence was nothing other than a tactic. As a matter of fact, when the British were fighting the Zulus and killing us in Azania, South Africa, Gandhi fought with the British. He comes to try to excuse himself by saying he fought only as a medic, but he was patching up British soldiers that we wounded to come back and kill us. So objectively, he fought for the British. He was in their army. If you would look at Gandhi's history, you would see that Gandhi came to try out this non-violence in the first instance in Azania, South Africa. And when General Smuts got through with him, Smuts ran him out of South Africa with his non-violence to India. In India, it was more conducive. Of course, you must know that in India, while Gandhi had non-violence, there was a lot of violence against the British. And indeed, the British was put in the position, just like America was, you deal with Malcolm or you deal with King. You deal with the violent forces or you deal with Gandhi. It was as simple as that. Of course, non-violence had a good chance in India because it faced British imperialism, and British imperialism was more intelligent than the other imperialist forces in Europe. When people were coming for independence, they didn't fight. They gave them their flag, wrote out their constitution, and picked their leader for them. The French were stupid. They fought everywhere, got defeated everywhere, got whooped in Vietnam, got whooped in Algeria, got whooped in Guinea, and gonna get whooped in the Canary, Cancan, in what's they call Caledonia. The Portuguese fought everywhere and got whooped everywhere. Maybe if Gandhi was facing French or Portuguese imperialism, the situation might have been different. Non-violence is a tactic, and it can only be a tactic in a violent world. I'm a living example of this. I've used non-violence and can use it tomorrow, as long as it's working. But when it's not working, I'm chucking hand grenades because I want to be free. Malcolm X is absolutely correct. You get your liberation by any means necessary.
If you could say something about Israeli policy in Africa, not just Southern Africa, but all of Africa.
Well, if you look at Israel today, she's supporting all of the terrorist regimes that we have in Africa. You know, Mobutu is the one who killed Lumumba, and his bodyguards are Israelis. Doe was a bloody killer in Liberia, and the people are trying to bring him down, and he's supported here by Israelis. Of course, the Israelis will try and bribe you and confuse you. So in the beginning they used to come and say they were nice people and give nice agricultural, you know, just like missionaries when they first came into Africa. So a relationship with Israel outside of South Africa, Tanzania, is just like it is there. It's a policy aimed at confusing the African masses in order to contain its racist regime.
Yes, your position on Israel and Zionism is clear, but there's another position that is perhaps somewhat more ambiguous that I wonder if you could clarify for us. Two remarks have been attributed to you, and I wonder if you would say whether you said them or not, and what, if you did, what you meant by them. One remark was there is no such thing as Jewish people. Another one is on a leaflet that we received when we came in here. Quote, Judaism is a gutter religion. We must take a lesson from Hitler. The citation is from a speech at the University of Maryland in February 1986.
The second statement I never said, and I could not say, as I've said, Judaism comes from my people. The first statement I did make. There's no such thing as a Jewish people because Judaism is a religion. There's no such thing as Catholic people. There's no such thing as Muslim people. What Zionism does is to take a religion and create out of it a false nationalism. Consequently, I, an African, conscious of the fact that my people gave Judaism to the world, know that these Africans didn't start becoming African people and became Jewish people. They were Africans of the Jewish religious faith.
So that is your stand on Zionism. It refers to your stand on Zionism.
Exactly.
Rather, and you did not make
A second statement I could never make.
Thank you.
You never told us the title of that book, or if you did, I missed it.
Asata Shaku. I'm sorry, Asata Shaku's book is an autobiography. It's the autobiography of Asata Shaku.
Also, is there any couple of books that you could name for us that we might...
Yes. When you go out in the back of the room and you see our comrades there in the party, we have our book list broken down into different areas, and they could explain it to you. And they also have materials there, some which our parties were able to put together and give away, and others which we'll ask a contribution for so we can help give away some more.
Back to the issue of violence versus nonviolent means. If a just end is a principle that you can't bend on, and I agree with you that principles aren't bent on, can you create a just end with unjust means?
But violence is not an unjust means. Why do you, if a man breaks into your house and tries to kill your wife, and you defend yourself against this man, are you using unjust means?
Well, I would say yes. There's no conflict between pacifism and socialism.
I beg your pardon?
There's no conflict between pacifism and socialism.
Well, yes.
Active pacifism. I'm not talking,
All right, but I do not know, and in my limited knowledge and reasoning, do not believe that capitalists will fall down with nonviolent action, no matter how active it is. And certainly if it will not, I will not draw the line into saying that I will not bring an unjust system down because of refusal to use violence. I will think this is irresponsible on my part. I give you an example. Mr. Mandela has just been released from prison. Anyone here who knows nothing about Nelson Mandela must know that Nelson Mandela does not like war at all. He's a man who loves peace. If Nelson Mandela can get freedom through negotiations, he will do everything to get it. Everything. And if you listen to his speeches, he's making all sorts of appeal. But in every one of his speeches, he's saying, armed struggle must continue. Armed struggle must continue. There's nowhere where we can see that a system is brought down without violence, and certainly we would not limit ourselves not to bringing it down because of means. So we do not see violence. Of course, we're not pacifists, and we do not see violence as an unjust means. We see it as a proper means, and sometimes the only responsible means to ensure the liberation of humanity.
if I could follow up, if we assume the elite are individual people, it's easy to say they, them, but still we're dealing with human beings with the capacity for justice, for kindness, for be it a religious definition of love or whatever the human definition is. Is it not possible to, as you've been socialized to be a violent capitalist, to socialize the violent capitalist to be a non-violent socialist?
Yes, of course. But the only place where you and I would differ is that we say, on the means to get there, I would say that you may have to use violence and do not be intimidated from using it. You will say, under no condition, it should be used. So our disagreement is only on means, not on objectives. And our only disagreement is that you consider violence to be unjust, and I do not.
And I don't want to, I realize there's a lot of people online, but I would just end that if the utopian state can't be achieved, cannot, if it's a goal, remains a goal, then the means become the end.
No, I do not accept the word utopian in relationship to anything that humanity is striving for. Because once you say utopian, you put limits on them. And I put no limits on man and woman. There is nothing they cannot achieve. If they can go to the moon, they can build a society which is free of all forms of exploitation.
If you say that blacks must unite amongst themselves to become free, what do you see as the role of a white person that chooses to separate themselves from the racist or the status quo?
Their problem is to give rapidly political education to the white working class. The white working class has an objective role to play in this country, and they are going to live up to the historical role. Now, the white working class in this country is politically unconscious and politically backward in relationship to its own interest. This is done by the capitalist system, which comes to mystify them and intoxicate them with racism and with believing that they too can become Rockefeller if they work hard, etc. So the white working class must be properly politically educated to its ends, objective, and its interests.
Brother Ture, I just wanted to ask, you made several references earlier about the miseducation of our people about our own history. What steps do you think can be taken towards the re-education of our people?
The only steps that can be taken is the collective study of our people. The collective study of our people by our people. And this calls for organization. We have built into our party the solution to this problem. When you join our party, the first thing and the only thing that we require of you to do is to read 5 pages a night for the first 6 months in our party. Every 2 weeks, after having read 5 pages, you come to sit down with a group of people who have read the same material you've read, these 5 pages every night, thus becoming some 70 pages every 2 weeks. And all of you discuss what you've read. This is the only way that we can come to do it. Individual study will not solve our problem. We must have collective study and collective thought.
Hello. I have just a comment, actually. I feel that you have done us somewhat of a disservice tonight. I feel that your contradictory remarks on women, I did not take them lightly. On the one hand, you thank us for our contribution to the struggle. On the other hand, you make derogatory remarks. And I think you owe the women in this audience, the black women in this audience, an apology for those kinds of comments. I think that those were sexist remarks.
Which one? I'm sorry, I'm more than happy to make the apology, but which remark? No, I'm sorry, no.
Okay, I'll work together. And for instance, your remark about the Black Panther sister who is now in Cuba. Yes, about how her message to us tonight, to us black women, after all she's been through, is to tell us to stop frying her hair, and so we can get down better. Is that?
I am so sorry.
That was the only message that you had from her to us.
So sorry. I didn't say that, and I even said, if you read the book from this sister, the sister said it. I did not. Have you read the book?
Is that the best quote from the book?
That was not the quote. I even told you that she was the roughest sister. She was head of the Black Liberation Army.
I'm saying they're contradictory remarks.
It is not contradictory. She's the one who said it, and she's the leader of the Black Liberation Army. If there's a contradiction, she is the contradiction. I can't hear you. I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
If you have any other comments, we need to move on. Okay, there'll be a reception at the Y afterwards, and we have to move on with other questions. We're here to have a... Excuse me. We're here to have an intellectual discussion, okay? By arguing, by perpetrating an argument, we are not having an intellectual discussion. Can we go to the other mic, please?
Of course they come back to it. You can come back to the discussion because I'm not afraid of it as soon as we get the others. I like it because I love to want a difficulty.
First, I just wanted to ask about a couple of inaccuracies.
Can you speak a little bit louder,
I'm sorry. You said that that Africa was where Judaism came from.
Yes.
That's where Moses came from, and he was a prophet. But if you'll notice,
I'm sorry, I can't hear him.
I'm sorry. Monotheism is traced back to the patriarchs of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, who were not from Africa. Also, about your comments about Gandhi fighting the wars in the Zulu, and that he wasn't for nonviolence, that was before he developed his theory of satyagraha and nonviolence. And after that, he came to say that that was one of the biggest mistakes he ever made, even though he only served as a medic. Also, I just wanted to ask one more question. You state that Zionism is racist, and you attribute that to the founder Theodore Herzl, but you also say that a few years later, Marcus Garvey, who you preface with Honorable Marcus Garvey,
which he is.
Okay, that as it may be, he advocates going back to Africa. for the black people. Theodore Herzl advocated going back to Israel for the Jewish people. Could you elaborate on that?
Okay, let me take your first statement. For a point of information, I'm sorry, no, stay by the mic, I need some information. You said Isaac, Abraham,
Isaac, and Jacob.
And where did they develop this monotheism?
They came from Samaria, Asia.
Well, where did they develop it?
Where did they develop it?
Yes. You know, things that developed in a space, you know, life has two factors, time and space.
They came down to the land of what's now Palestine, Israel, and Jordan, came through there. Yes, they went to Egypt.
Can
I just say that with all the credits you're taking for Africa, that Africa was the one who enslaved the Jews also?
Please, no, I can't accept that statement. How many Jews went into Africa? Use the Torah and use Deuteronomy, the Old Testament, as your basis. How many Jews went into Africa?
I don't know that figure out there.
Does anybody know the figure? Well, there was actually more, 70 actually. There were 70 went in and there were no women. And these 70, of the 70, some 30 died out in the first generation. When they walked out of Egypt, do you know how many walked out? 650,000. So, who were these Jews?
The fact is, though, that 400 years.
With no women? Let me tell you about
the fact is that some people in Africa were slave holders. And
no, there's no question. Every society has passed through. Which society has not passed through slaveholding?
And Mauritania, which is an African nation, is the last one to abolish.
Which society has not gone through slaveholding? Which society? Every society has passed through slaveholding. That's not the issue here. But when you say they went in and they came out, they multiplied, let me give you a biological fact. In biology, there are things called genes, and they're determined genes and recessive genes. And the black gene is determinant over every other gene.
Okay, we can get out into the other.
There's your biological fact. Now, the second point, I'm sorry, not the third question, which was about Arnold Marcus Garvey. The second question.
The second point was just clarification of Gandhi's views.
Oh yes, Gandhi's views, yes. The fact that Gandhi did this comes again to show that it is a tactic. Even after independence, through British imperialism, trickery, India came to be separated from Pakistan through armed struggle. And many of the people who were using non-violent means now turned to violent means, and Gandhi himself was faced with this reality.
Yeah, it's a reality, but it's not Gandhi being contradictory.
Well,
because Gandhi was not in favor of splitting up India. And the fact is, like I said, after he participated as a medic in the war, he said that was one of the biggest mistakes he ever did, he ever made, and that he regrets it thoroughly.
Have you know about anything called the Dalit movement in India? The Dalit movement.
I'm not familiar with it.
D-A-L-I-T. The Dalit movement, and they have a magazine called Dalit Voice. It comes out of India. Is a magazine which deals with the untouchables. And you know, these untouchables do not like Gandhi at all. And they raise many questions about his question of how to impose non-violence on the question of the untouchables, a problem which Gandhi never attacked, because he understood that there was no way for him to apply these principles against the Hindus who were of the upper classes that wanted to continue with the problem of untouchability. So, if non-violence was a principle, it should have been able to be applied everywhere, all the time, under all conditions. And again, Gandhi's life, even showing that it was an error, shows in fact that it was a tactic. Because if non-violence was this principle, then he would never have been involved in a violent action at all.
What I'm saying is he didn't develop his non-violent principles.
That's what I'm saying. The fact that he developed these principles were tactics because if they were principles, they would not have been tactics and changed.
Okay.
Your last question. The Honorable Marcus Garvey, The Honorable Marcus Garvey said that we Africans should return to Africa. It is clear that we come from Africa. It is clear that Africa is our home. As a matter of fact, so strong is this that once Mother Africa put a stamp on you, 400 years of cold weather, Nat Nola, and frying your hair cannot disguise you. That's how strong it is. Now, when Herzl said, return to Israel, there is no basis to show that those people who claim Israel to be their home came from Israel in the first place.
Just because there's no distinguishing characteristics on their face or their skin color, it's a cultural thing. And to say there's no such thing as Jewish people, there's cultural ties. They don't look the same, maybe not, but there are cultural ties.
No, Judaism is a religion.
Yeah, but there also with the religion has developed a culture.
Judaism is a religion. As a religion, it has no right to ask for land. No religion has a right to ask for land. Do you think the Catholics should have land?
I'm not saying religion has a right to ask for land. Does a color have a right to ask for land? No, a people has a right to ask for land.
Africans have the right to ask for land. Africa belongs to Africans.
We're going to have to take two last questions. These two over here, they've been waiting the longest.
All right. The system then is rotten and corrupt, as you stated. Then, if you're working in an organization that's within the system and working, for instance, you said the NAACP or the Urban League, if you're working for one of those organizations, then are you in effect working to keep the system going?
You must hear the axiom which we use. Not, of course, making any character association with the organizations you mentioned. But we are so badly disorganized that bad organization is better than no organization at all. Do you agree with the axiom?
Yeah, for the most part.
Okay, there's one last question. I have to break this up.
Do you feel that applying a European name to Native Americans is racist?
I think the Native Americans would really have to themselves respond to this issue. The question is, do you think that giving Native Americans European names is racist? Calling them Indians? Yeah, I would. I have some problems with it, you know, really, because.
You said it over and over and over.
Yeah, I know, but you're quite right. But the problem is that it is not yet a clear name that they themselves have decided upon. So usually say the indigenous people, the real owners of the land. You're absolutely correct. I have great problems with it because I know that the Indians come from India, and Gandhi is an Indian, and knows because of the era of Columbus that they're called Indians, you know, so I do have problems with it, but again, this is a problem that we work very closely with the American, because they even say the American Indian movement, so we ourselves cannot go beyond it, but we are sure that as they become more firm in their struggle, as their struggle rises to a higher level of consciousness, all of these problems they will attack seriously, and we will come to follow their lead here. We thank you. Before we go, we remind you that you must organize. You must organize the masses of humanity. Political power comes only from the organized masses. You African students have a responsibility to organize your people. When you go out the door, if you want to know about our party, you're really revolutionary, you're really conscious, you want to do something for your people, check out our party. But even if you're not conscious, check out any organization and join any organization to help make you conscious of your responsibility to your people. Thank you very much.